welcome everybody. This is Strongsville Early Learning Preschool. We are doing a parent education series, and today's topic is facilitating communication and early language development. We are the Strongsville Early Learning Preschool speech language pathologists. I'm Wendy Kullgren.
And I'm Peggy Kometz.
And I'm Mackenzie Cunningham.
And we're going to be presenting for you today. We hope that you will leave today knowing a little bit about language development from birth through preschool age, and also have some great takeaways on things that you can use in your homes or online, books, apps that you can use with your kids to facilitate their communication skills. All right. So first, this is me. Like I said, I'm Wendy Kullgren. This is my 10th year at Strongsville Early Learning Preschool as your speech language pathologist here. I graduated from Baldwin Wallace College back in '97 and in communication disorders, and I did my master's program at Cleveland State University. I live in Parma with my husband and my 3 boys. Just love spending time with my family, love working with the children here at the preschool, helping them develop their communication skills. So first, let's look at how speech and language skills develop. We know that the most intensive development of communication skills is from birth through age 5. That's where the most language happens. That's where we see the greatest increases. We see that big language explosion in that amount of time. We really want to facilitate communication in those early years. Understanding of language, which is called receptive language, has to happen before the expressive communication or the expressive language or the words come. The kids need to be able to understand the language, the vocabulary, the concepts before they're able to use them. So this triangle here that I put from talkthecourse.com, it's looking at the way that language has to develop. The skills on the bottom have to happen before you can build up the triangle. So for example, pre-verbal and early interaction at the very bottom there, eye contact, turn taking, joint attention and pointing, things that we're working on with our littlest babies, the infants, the wee little ones. That has to kind of happen and be mastered before the attention and listening start. Then the play skills. Then on top of play, we've got understanding. So that's where they're learning how to follow directions, how to understand what's being asked of them, so that they can come up with an answer for expressing, which is the blue area there, where they're talking. They're maybe our nonverbal kids are starting to use some pre-signs or some gestures. They're increasing their vocabulary and their grammar skills. And then at the very top is where we're looking at speech sounds. So their clarity, their pronunciation, how they're using their speech and articulation sounds. So a lot of times we have little kiddos who are maybe 2 turning 3 or 3 turning 4, and they're still in the yellow to green stage. And we have parents coming to us and saying, but they're not saying their words clearly, or they're mispronouncing this sound. But you can see that that comes much later. We need to work on those earlier skills before we're able to really push some of that articulation. Okay? Language is developed best in an environment rich in sounds. We want to just continue to expose those little babies, expose those preschoolers and infants to sounds, sights, exposure to hearing the language. Most important thing is interactions with others. A lot of that FaceTime, communication. We want to really interact with those little ones to build that language, to build that interaction, to build that vocabulary. And I've got a fun little clip here. Some of you may have seen it. It just kind of shows interaction.
Okay. They need to work on that, right? Yes, okay. Did you understand it though? No. Okay. All right. Huh? Oh, no, not this one. This is the grand finale of this. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh yeah. Right, don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was like that. Yeah. Yeah. Like go somewhere else with that, but don't break it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. And then it was like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, what in the world? But don't do it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Oh, that's crazy. Right.
So the little one there, just kind of babbling, dad taking the context, just having a good old time with it and interacting. And the child in that situation is learning things like intonational patterns, how to use that joint attention and that eye contact back and forth with dad while watching a TV show, and conversational turn taking. First, I'm going to say something or babble something, and then dad's going to respond, and then I'm going to take another turn, and then dad will respond again. And when he laughs, I can laugh. So there's a lot of learning going on in that little interaction, even though the child isn't saying any true words. Okay, so when we look at what is typical, it's hard to know when our children are delayed or having problems in a skill if we don't know what typical development looks like. So the next several slides are just kind of going through different age groups, talking about what would be considered typical. And just so you know, typical is a range. It's not set in stone, it's not a point in time, but it's rather a range, because kids are all different. And some of them are going to develop some skills before others. Some kids are going to be a lot more physical and walking and running first, and maybe put the language skills off for a little bit. But this is just kind of just so you have an idea of the milestones that are typically reached at certain ages. So again, receptive language skills is the understanding. That has to happen first. So infant to 3 months, we're looking at those newborn babies. They startle at loud sounds. From the moment they're born, loud sounds, bright lights, they startle, they'll cry. They quiet and calm when they're spoken to. And they increase or decrease their sucking behavior in response to sounds. There's been a lot of great studies about this, and how the mother's voice or familiar people's voices will create that sucking response in infants. Expressive language skills, they're making some pleasure sounds, they're cooing, they're making those little early gurgling sounds. Their cries are different for different needs. Moms and dads can usually tell what a hungry cry is versus what's a mad cry, what's a sleepy cry. They smile when they see a familiar person. 4 to 6 months now, we're looking at children who are able to look in different directions of sounds. They can kind of seek out where a sound is coming from. They respond to changes in a tone of voice. They love toys that make sounds, and they pay attention to music. Expressive language skills and use, they're babbling some different sounds. You might hear some early ma, 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 da, da, das in this stage. They chuckle and they laugh. They can vocalize excitement and displeasure, and they'll gurgle during playtime. 7 months to 1 year, they're starting to enjoy some back and forth games like patty cake, peekaboo. You'll get a reaction from those, some laughs, some smiles, some gurgles. They will listen when spoken to. They start to recognize words for common objects. So cup, book, cookie, and juice. They'll start to kind of understand what objects go with those words. And they also begin to respond to questions like, come here, or want more. And then their expressive language, they're starting to vary their babbling, like we saw with that little guy in the video, his intonation, his gestures. Kind of, even though he didn't have the words, his intonation and pattern of speech sounded kind of mature because he was imitating that kind of intonation. They will use speech or non-crying sounds to get and keep your attention. Use some gestures. They'll start to wave, blow kisses, holding their arms up to be held, imitating different speech sounds. And usually by their first birthday, they have 1 or 2 true words. 1 to 2 years. This is where we're really starting to look at building vocabulary in this stage. So under receptive language and understanding, they're pointing to a few body parts when they're asked, where's your tummy? Where's your nose? Where's your head? They can follow simple commands and understand simple requests, like roll the ball, kiss the baby. Where's daddy? They listen to simple stories, songs, and rhymes, and they can point to pictures in a book when named. Expressive language at this stage, they're saying more and more words every month. This is where we hear a lot of parents talking about a language explosion. So one day they're using a couple words, the next day you hear even more, the next day even more, and they're not losing the words that they're gaining. They're using some 1 to 2 word questions. So as they get closer to 2 years, we're looking to see that they can put those 2 words together. So for example, where kitty, or go bye-bye. More cookie, no juice, mommy book. And then using many different consonant sounds at the beginning of words. At this stage, we're still not looking at them needing to always put the ending on words. They're just kind of concentrating in their little speech development there about getting the beginning of the word. 2 to 3 years old, they're understanding differences in meanings, opposite meanings, such as go, stop, in, out, big, and little, following some requests that have 2 steps. So not just a single step request now, but we're looking at something like get the book and give it to me. They enjoy listening to and hearing stories and books being read to them. They're using 2 to 3 words to talk about and ask for things. And then here are some of the early developing consonant sounds that we would expect to start seeing develop around age 2 and into age 3. Their speech is understood by familiar people most of the time, not necessarily all of the time. Also at this stage, we will see some stuttering on words or sounds. So as they're starting to put some of these words together, they're also starting to look like they might be stuttering a little bit. And we do get some parents who come in pretty concerned, like all of a sudden my son or my daughter is starting to stutter when they're talking. That is still very, very typical at this stage in development because they're thinking of the words, their receptive language is so much greater than what they're able to say at this point. So as they're trying to put those words together, their brain is really moving faster than their mouth is able to. So we do see some early stuttering at this stage, not in every child, but in some. And typically at this stage, if we have a parent who's concerned about that, we want to listen to the kiddo, make sure that it is kind of just those developmental patterns, and wait it out and see what happens. Usually you'll see it kind of ebb and flow. And then also, this is where you get the kids, why? 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 Lots of asking why. Curious about their little world. From 3 to 4 years, they will respond if you call them from another room. They're starting to understand a wider variety of vocabulary, such as colors, shapes, family words, like brother, grandma, aunt. They're using 3 to 4 words together, usually by their 4th birthday. They're forming simple sentences. Some of the small words in sentences might be missing at this point, so they might leave out an is or an are or the. They're answering simple what, who, and where questions. They use a variety of types of words. So when children start to speak, they start mostly with the nouns or the labeling words, cup, book, shoe. But then by age 3 to 4 years, we are looking at children who are becoming much more mature in their vocabulary, and they're able to use more things like verbs. So they might say run, walk, jump, hop. Pronouns, I, me, he, she, and descriptors, which are those adjectives, color words, shape words, and size words. And their speech is understood by unfamiliar people most of the time. 4 to 5 years, which are our last of the preschool years, because usually 5 or 6, they're moving on to kindergarten. So this is the last year we get them here at Strongsville Early Learning Preschool. And receptive language, they're understanding words for order and time sequencing, so first, next, last. They can follow longer directions. For example, put your pajamas on, brush your teeth, and pick out a book. They hear and understand most of what is said and at home and at school. They do still have errors on some of those older developing sounds. Sounds develop over all of pretty much childhood and into school age, up to age 7 or 8. And these sounds here, the L, S, Z, R, the TH sounds, SH sounds, CH sounds, and J sounds are sounds that develop typically older. So at the preschool age, we're not at all concerned if your child is missing those sounds just yet. They're naming some letters and numbers, not all, but they are able to usually do some. They use sentences with a subject and a verb, so all of a sudden their connected speech is becoming much more mature and adult sounding. They're able to keep a conversation going about a preferred topic for several turns. And they talk in different ways depending on the listener and the place. They know how to moderate the loudness level of their voice. If you ask them to be quiet in a certain place, like a library or a church or a setting where they have to kind of moderate that or speak to a different person, a stranger, or a family friend versus one of their peer friends, they vary how they speak based on where and who they're speaking with. Okay?
So hi, I am Mackenzie Cunningham. I'm one of the speech pathologists here. This is my 4th year here. I love every day, every single kid that I get to work with. It just brings me so much joy. It's so rewarding. I'm very passionate about helping people communicate. It's just so important, and I love it. So thank you for sharing your children with me and bringing them into my life. So for my part, I'm going to start talking about, building on what Wendy was saying about how the brain and communication is really developing in those first 3 to 5 years of life. Well, all of that time is when kids are tuning into the environment. So they are, listening to everyone and they're interacting with people, and that's how they learn communication, is by listening to it and observing it and trying it. So when children are on a tablet or they're watching movies or playing video games, this can be kind of detrimental. So for the American Academy of Pediatrics, they recommend right now less than 2 hours if the child is 5 to 18. Now, more of our children, ages 2 to 5 that are here, no more than 1 hour a day. And then for kids that are younger than 18 months, none at all, no screen time at all. So that's kind of interesting because I know a lot of children always have tablets or a phone or something that they are getting to play on. And even sometimes we think that educational apps are really helping, but especially when you're younger, especially in those first 3 to 5 years of life, it's actually not good because if we think about it, we're tuning in to the electronics and we're engaging with that rather than tuning into our environment and hearing all the sounds and all the words and watching how people socially interact with each other and learning it and then practicing it. That's how language and communication develops. So that's why it's so important to have not as much of this screen time. An interesting study has come out in 2017 that said for every 30 minutes of screen time, there's actually a 49% increased risk of expressive speech delay. And that's something that a lot of times it really is correlated with that amount of screen time that they're getting. So some things that it negatively impacts are problem-solving skills. If you think about it, when kids are playing on an app, if it gets hard or frustrating, what can they do? They can just swipe it away and go to a new one. They don't have to have that, problem-solving moment and developing the coping skills. A lot of times doctors are now saying that when kids are getting shots, when they start to cry, now what's happening, it used to be that the mom, will say, oh, it's gonna be okay, and you start giving them that language that they need to have in their head to develop that self-coping. It's gonna be okay, I'm gonna be okay, it hurts now, it won't hurt later. And then that, the hugging and just the personal interaction there, which is so good for kids to develop that. But now, a lot of times, once they have the shot and they're crying, a phone is being handed to them or a tablet immediately, which is tough because then they don't have that moment of learning that coping skill and that self-talk that they need. It also affects brain development. It's showing that there's studies that are coming out more and more that are showing that it's actually really hurting, especially the frontal cortex, which is where all of your planning, organization, attention, focus, all of that is housed there. And it's actually really hurting that area. And they're showing that there's been changes in that area due to excessive screen time. So there's more and more studies that are coming out, but it doesn't just affect language and communication and articulation. It's also affecting the brain. It's affecting social skills too, because if we think about it, if we're interacting with an iPad and a game, then we're not having that moment for social interaction. We still need to be able to balance that and give them those opportunities to socially interact. So what can we do instead? That's what I want to talk about. We can set up the environment to facilitate a lot of communication. I love to put things really, really high up. If it's something I know, okay, this child really, really loves this toy, I'm going to put it really high up. And so that way they have to reach it. They can't get it. And then they have to have that moment of turning to me and asking for help. And that's a teaching moment. A lot of times, if something's right in reach, they don't have that opportunity to ask for help. It's hard to watch kids struggle and not immediately help them. It's really painful, I know. But it's so important to wait. And it's really funny too sometimes to just see what your child will do. Like if you put something up really high, or if you give them like at snack, like something that's really hard to open, or at dinner, or something like a pudding cup. If you know they can't open that, rather than giving it to them open, can we give it to them closed? Watch them kind of mess with it for a while, and then just sit there and wait and see what they'll do. Sometimes, a lot of times when I get kids come in for evaluations, they'll sit there and I like to give them a jar, and I'll put something they really, really want in the jar, and then I put the cap on really, really tight and I give it to them. And I'm like, here you go, open it. And they will just sit there. And it's sad that sometimes kids will just put it down and walk away. And that goes kind of back to when you have an app and it gets hard, we can swipe it away. We can go to something else. So that's in that moment, I have them come back and then we work on, do you need help? You could say, I need help. And then you give them those words that they need to say in that moment. So it's so important, though, to wait. And it's so hard because you're like, I just want to help you, especially like clothing, a coat. I love that because most kids cannot do the zipper for a while. So I love to just sit there and look at them and smile and wait and wait and wait. And then they look at me. And if they go, even just a vocalization, then I say, well, you could say help. Or you could say, I need help, depending on where they're at. If they can only do like a one word right now, then if they can just do and then you could say help. But if they are able to say help, then you could expand it and you could say, I need help. So building on that communication, making a lot of opportunities for it is so awesome to do. Another really good thing is responsive teaching. I swear by it. I live by it. It is research-based. It's really, really good for creating a foundation for language. So if your child is at a stage in their development where they are not yet looking at you, making eye contact, if you feel like they don't notice you right now, or they're not really playing with you, taking turns, they're not interested in you right now, it's so important to start there. So many times we're concerned about, well, they can't answer a who, what, where question, or they can't, say these words in this moment, or say hi to someone. Well, right now, we still need to look at that foundational skill of just the back and forth turn taking with a person. So it's so important to be your child's favorite toy. So toys are great, and I know kids love to play with lots of things that light up and all that, but make yourself more interesting than their favorite toy. Ways you can do that, you have to get into their world. So get on their level, be right face to face. Don't be standing up when they're shorter. Make sure that you're right at their level. Make sure that they're looking at you. And then try to do what's called people play. And that's like tickle games, like I'm gonna, and then you wait, and you wait for the child to look at you. Most times, if you wait and you create that awkward pause, kids will finally do something. I like to always wait until their eyes are on me. So sometimes I'll have a child come in and we're doing like I'm gonna, and I'm waiting and waiting, and they're turned around. And then if they start to turn and they kind of like take my hands, I try to get them to look at me, and then I'll start it, because we really want that eye contact. But you want to just wait, and then you want to take whatever they do as their turn. So if the child is looking at you and you're stopping and waiting, and then they go, that can be their turn. Or if they they lean in and smile at you, that can be their turn. And then you want to keep going back and forth. So I do that over and over and over. So if it's like a song too, that's a good way to do it. If you're singing like Old MacDonald had a, and then you wait, and then it gets awkward, and then they'll go, ah, or they'll lean in, or they'll try to grab your hands or something. And then I'll say farm, and then we'll keep going. And then I'll stop again. And then we'll keep going, and then stop again. So it's so important to do those interactions, because if you think about it, communication is that. It's a reciprocal, back and forth, turn-taking interaction. You say something, I say something. You say something, and we look at each other the whole time. And this is how we develop it. It starts here. So if your child is not yet doing that, rather than starting to focus on what words do they know, what colors and numbers and questions and all of that, start here. It's so important that we start here and we don't skip this step, because we don't want them to just learn a memorized phrase rather than being able to understand its purpose and understand how valuable and joyful human interaction is. So follow their lead is so important. Imitate their play. So if your child has 2 blocks and they're banging them together, take 2 blocks and start banging them together too. All of a sudden, that will help your child notice you, because you're doing what they want to do. So rather than trying to say, if they're putting the car up the wall or putting the car on their head, rather than saying, no, the car needs to go like this, we have to play with it like this, let's just go, I'm going to do that too. And then if they make a sound, if they go, brrr, imitate that sound, and then go back and forth playing with that sound, because that's going to get them to notice you, and that's going to help you get into their world. Don't make them get into your world. Get into theirs. Decrease your questions. So don't ask, what are you doing? What is that? What is that? What is that? Who is that? What, over and over and over as you're playing. Instead, have more opportunities for just silence and waiting for them to say something or make a vocalization, and then imitate it. And then you can start to build on it. So as you're doing that back and forth interaction of like if you're doing like a peekaboo, and then you're waiting, and then you see that they want more, and they go, ah, and they grab your hands, say, oh, you want more, you want more. You could say, I want more, and then you do it again. So building on their turn and expanding it and modeling. Other strategies could be, so I like to use sentence strips. So this is beyond that stage. So once you're at a stage where a child is using more of like 1 to 2 words, but we want to make longer sentences and build on that, or if they're only using words to request and not to describe things, I love to use sentence strips. It's helpful for kids with trouble articulating and trouble seeing that there's more than one word. It gives them a visual, and it gives them a tactile kind of stimulation. So when I like to use like, I want strips. So I have 3 boxes so that they can see there's 3 words here. I say, I want whatever. So a lot of times I have kids come in and they go, ball. And I go, oh, I want ball. And then I take their hand, we put it on here, and their hand taps it with me as we say it. And you'd be so surprised how much clearer it gets, because all of a sudden they've seen there's 3 words, not 1. So that can be very helpful. I have ones for like, I need help, but sometimes you won't have, a sentence strip ready to go. I love to always have like a dry erase board and a marker, or even on these, they're laminated, and I wrote on the back of this one, tried to erase it, but I like to use like a dry erase marker in the moment, and I'll just write, a child was handing something to me and they wanted me to do it, and I wanted them to say, you do it. So I just wrote it out. So that's just something, that you can do. Just have a dry erase board and a marker handy, or if you have sentence strips that are laminated, you could write on them. It's just really helpful to take with you if you can have something like that, in your bag. And then also, it's good to do linguistic, it's called expansions and extensions. So that's when, if your child says something, you're gonna build on what they said to try to help them bridge that gap. So if they say, doggy run, you could say, yes, the dog is running. So that you've given them, this is how it's supposed to be. and this is how we're gonna bridge it. And then extensions is like you add more information. So if they say baby cry, you could say, yes, the baby is crying, he's hungry. So you've just added more information to that, but you've given them so much language there, and a nice learning opportunity. Self-talk and parallel talk is like if you're cooking in the kitchen and you're saying, now mommy's doing this, and and you're just talking about everything you're doing in that moment. And then the child is learning that language. So lots of talking, less asking of questions, but more describing of your environment and things you're doing. Parallel talk is when you're playing with your child. If they're building blocks, you say, you are building, wow, 1 block, 2 block, and you're just talking about what they're doing that whole time, and that's helpful too. So then they can build that language for their own play next time, and then next time you might hear them say, building, because they've gotten that word from you. Focus stimulation is just if you have a specific word that you really want them to get, like if it's the word go, you're gonna just bombard them with the word go over and over again. So if when you get to a door, let's go, you could say let's go, and then you're walking down the hallway, we are going, let's go, we're going. And then you get into whatever next room you're in and you're doing bubbles and you're saying ready, set, go! And so just constant modeling of whatever word that you really, really want them to use, modeling it over and over again. Like focus on it, like if there's one day of a week that you want to just really focus on that word all day long, that's really good to do. Refrain from saying say. A lot of times when we have a child coming up to another adult and then the adult says hi, and then you go, oh, you gotta say hi. Sometimes if your child is one that is imitating that and saying, say hi, just like you said it, that's really difficult for them. So sometimes it's more difficult for other children to separate that, what they're supposed to say. They just imitate the whole thing. So it's actually better to say like the child's name. So say it's like, you say, Mackenzie says, I need help. So I always say their name and then says, then I pause, and then I give the kind of a sing-songy voice for the part that they need to say. So they can kind of separate that in their brain of, okay, this is what I say, and then it's, I need help. So I kind of sing it a little bit so that it's definite that this is the part. And it works a lot. You'd be surprised how well this works. So if you're having trouble with that, with your child right now, that's something that you could try and see if it works. Toys. So I love toys that are like low tech. So not a lot of technology to them, just like very basic toys. Bath toys. Bath time is such a great time for communication because there's like a very defined space. They can't really run away from you. There's just a lot of face time there that you can be using. And then all the bath toys are pretty low tech, and you can just be modeling words like pour and swim and float and sink and water and cup. And then like fill-in songs. I love songs like nursery rhymes, Old MacDonald, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, anything where it has like that repeating line and then always like stop at one part. So I love to do that, like if you're doing Twinkle Twinkle Little, and then wait and have them say star. And then ready, set, go. So like a car ramp, I love car ramps or ball ramps, anything where you can make the object stop and then you do ready, set, and then the child has to say something in order for you to make it go. Or even if you have just like a car and you're going ready, set, and then you wait, and then they say go, and then you make the car fall off the table or whatever it is. And then, like a farm, you can do prepositions like in, on, behind with the animals. I love bubbles. I love to do, bubbles can have so many things you can do with them. You can have them, I usually just hand the jar to the child with it really tight, and they can't open it, and then they have to hand it to me to open it, and we have that moment of, I need help. And then once you open it, then you're doing, do you want bubbles? And then we have, I want bubbles, and then ready, set, go. And then I like to cap it back up again and kind of put it down, and then wait for them to ask for more bubbles. And then you can model like verbs like pop, or blow them up, or blow them down. So things like that. I like surprise toys where something like happens with them. So I have like this minion. It was like a Happy Meal toy or something I found. And it's just, you press the back of it, and then the hat pops off. So I always go ready, set, and then once the child goes go, I press it, and then the hat comes off. And I love that because the kids, like, they always start laughing, and they think it's so fun, and I can keep them in that interaction for so long. But that interaction involves me. It's right by my face. They have to say something to me to make it go. They can't just press a button. They have to have me do it. And then once the hat is off, they can never get it back in. So then they have to ask for help. So I love toys like that. Doll houses are awesome. I love doll houses for boys or girls because you can work on. I have a lot of boys that love to play with doll houses too because it's people, it's common objects. You can model all of, if they don't know what a bed is or a bathtub or a sink, you can model all those words that are in your house. You can model how you're supposed to have a conversation and work on back and forth and pretend play. You can work on who, what, where. Who's in the bathtub? Where is the mommy? Things like that. And then trains, you can do like fast, slow, more, things like that. I love all those kind of toys. Books, these are just some that I love. I love fairy tale books. I love like the Bear series, like Bear Snores On. And then books with a lot of verbs. So whenever I'm choosing a book for therapy, I always try to find one that has a lot of things that they're doing so that we can work on describing. So like I have this book is like Let It Fall, it's called. And I like to go through and like, so on this page, there's tons of verbs. So this guy is waving. So I get out my sentence strip and we have like, he is waving. And we work on saying that. Waving, okay, he is waving. And then she is waving. You can do the girl too. So you can work on pronouns, you can work on describing, verbs, and then you can work on who is wearing the orange purse, the girl, I love all those kind of things with lots of verbs. Oh, they're jumping, they're falling, the hat fell off. So rather than reading books word for word, I just kind of throw that out the window. I like to just have them describe. Just look at the pictures on the page and just talk about it with each other. Everything you see. I see whatever it is, and I have a sentence strip for that too. I see blah, blah, blah. So books with lots of verbs. You can do so much with books. I love books. And then I know that screen time is not so great for development, but it's going to happen. You can't just completely throw the iPad out. They're going to want to use it. But if you're going to do apps, use engaging ones that are going to help build communication. And when you're using them, be there with them. So don't, try to decrease that amount of time where they're with the app alone. Try to make sure you're in on it with them. So I love, My Playhome is like one of my favorite apps because it's like a dollhouse, but kids sometimes that I can't get to engage with the dollhouse, they'll want to engage with this because it's an app. So I love, let's see. So with this app, you can make the characters like jump. I don't know if you can see it. You can make them sit down. You can turn on the TV or off the TV. You can close. You can open the blinds. You can have them eat. I love this. They can eat the apple. So you can say, she is eating, or who is eating, or what is she eating? You can work on who, what, where questions, all those things that you can do with a dollhouse. You can do with here, and the kids often get really engaged in that and learn even more from that. And then Babbel app, that's an app that you can have on your phone, and it's going to send you, these are all free apps, by the way. So this one will send you daily things, like ideas that you can do to develop communication at home. And it's awesome. You'll just and you enter in like your child's, age and if they're a boy or girl or whatever, things like that. And then it'll send you all these alerts of, here's different things you can do today to model different language. I like sounding board. If you have a child that's really, really struggling to get those words out right now and it's so frustrating, sometimes we use what's called AAC, so using like a device to communicate. But if you don't have that yet, There's some free apps. So Sounding Board is one where you can make like choice boards. You can take pictures of items, put it right on there, make a choice of 4 or choice of 2. So it's up in that right-hand corner. They took a picture of 2 different toys, and then you can have them select which one they want. So you can make different buttons. It's not like the most efficient app out there, but it's really helpful. You can just take a picture in the moment and then give them a way to communicate. Chatter pics, you can take a picture, so this cat here, you can take a picture of any item and then you can draw a mouth on it and then you can record your voice and you can make it talk. And kids love that. And if there's a word you want to really model, you can make that, if you took a picture of a cat and you make it say go, 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 go over and over, or whatever you want to do. Toontastic is fun. That one is where I actually have a link to it. You can create your own story. So this is like one that some child made.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we found what we've been looking for. Is that so? Yes, ma'am. Which direction is it in? Behind me, ma'am.
So it's a lot of pretend play, but they can create their own characters, what kind of setting they want, what's the storyline, and then they can record their own voice, making the characters talk. And it is so cool. Or you can do that. If you want to be talking to your child and you can't be at whatever moment it is, like maybe they're home with a babysitter or something, you could actually record your own story. So I really love that one because it's pretty interactive and facilitates language. And then there's also Imagistory. That one is like it's wordless picture books. And then you can go through and you can record your own voice or their own voice, like talking about it and making their own story. So I like all of those. So if you need to use apps, try to use these ones and try to be there next to them with it. And I always like to have that moment of, okay, it's my turn, and then we talk about it face to face, and then we go back. Make sure there's constant opportunities for that personal interaction. So thank you. I think that's it for my part. I'm going to hand it over to Peggy.
Thank you for coming. And I am Peggy Kometz. The kiddos call me Mrs. K. And this is my first year as a part of this preschool team. I've been a part of Strongsville schools since 1995. That's how long I've been with Strongsville. However, when I started my career, I worked for 9 years as a SLP. So if you add all of my years together, I've been working with children and families for 31 years. So I am very excited to kind of have a new career this year. I get to work with women who clearly have a great understanding of what communication is. So my particular role, and I forgot to talk about my favorite things aside from working with families and kids. I love to be with my family, I love the beach, and I like to exercise and run, which I can still do now, and I'm very thankful for that. Kind of as a summary, Wendy and Mackenzie really shared developmental milestones. They shared some wonderful techniques. And what I have to share are things that you could have at your home and once again reinforce the joy and the power of communication. What gives me the most excitement, and Wendy and Mackenzie said the same thing, is when I am with a child, when I am with a family, and there is true joy in the interaction. And there are so many ways that you can build that joy. And so whenever I travel to different sites and to different schools to meet new kiddos, first of all, I always have a bag. This one is huge. But so many things in this bag or on the tray are things that you have at home so that you can build communication with your kids. And like Mackenzie and Wendy both said, communication is about two people together. We need each other to communicate. We want to communicate. And we want to make our kiddos, no matter what their skills are, really want to be with us. So this is going to kind of be a group interaction. So for the people who came, you might have to try to do these things or think about doing them at home. And once again, I have things in a bag and on a tray that you can do to build communication. So the first thing that I would like to talk about is imitating. And you saw great pictures of imitating, and you saw a good video. When my children were born, what I loved the most is I would hold them right in front of me and look at their face, and whenever they made a sound, I made it back. And I smiled at them, and we had a lovely conversation with really no words, basically just smiling and interacting. So when you're little teeny tiny, that's what you do. As you get older, one of the activities that I do in kindergarten, I've done with kindergarten kiddos, with every kiddo, even with families, it's called the Do This game. But the Do This game has to do with watching and listening, but especially watching at the beginning, and it builds imitating skills. So, members of the audience, and if you're at home, if I say do this and I raise my hands, that's all you have. Oh, yes, you did it. Beautiful. If I say do this, I know you're looking at me. You've just done something that maybe you've never done before. So that's called do this with no talking. As I say to my little preschoolers, I go, your eyes are listening when we do this. Now the next way you can do this to also build understanding is if you say, but don't do it, I'll say, okay, your ears are listening, do this, touch your head. Yes, you did it. Touch your belly. Yes, you did it. Your ears were listening, and I wasn't doing it. So it kind of makes the kids really have to pay attention to what we're saying. And you can do that at home all the time. You don't need anything but yourself. Then, as you start to imitate sounds, the first sounds that you're going to imitate, and once again, Mackenzie and Wendy talked about this too, are sounds that your child is saying. Because then it's like, oh, these people are really listening to me. My mom or my grandma or my friend is really listening to what I have to say. The next piece is for following directions. And it kind of was the same activity as like the do this activity, but then you can play like mommy says, daddy says, kind of like Simon says. You can give your child a direction, they can give the direction back to you. Now, these are some of the tools that I'm sure you may have at home. Well, I'll do these first. Woo, as well as following instructions. Whoop, I lost one of my favorite ones. But a good way to practice imitating and follow directions, this is a paper towel roll. Everyone has them. They're amazing. You can use them for a lot of different things. But if you want to do an interacting game, you can take any toy, take anything, try to put it inside the tube. They can follow that direction. You can have the kiddos, you can have them turn a wind-up toy. They can follow a direction like that. You can take a bag that you get all the time when you're shopping, and you can have your, as my robot continues to walk, once again, at least it gathers everyone's attention, my little tiny toys. But then you can have your kiddo put a car in a bag. You can have little pieces of cloth, little blankets. It's the same thing for following instructions. You can put 2 items on a table on the floor. Typically, I'm usually sitting on the floor, like that's where kids love to play. Go to where the kiddos play. And for working on following instructions, you can do the same thing. You can have them hide things. You can hide things once they're ready to talk about things. You can hide it, they can watch you, and then you can ask to answer a question. Oh, where'd the bubbles go? And they're like, oh, it's under the bag. So these are things that everybody has all the time. You have at home. So far, a lot of them you probably would not have even had to purchase at a store. The one little aside I would give you is the dollar store and Target's Dollar Tree would be your favorite place to look for interactive and fun things. Turn taking, Mackenzie talked about turn taking too. And once again, you can do your paper towel roll for turn taking. You can push a car back and forth for turn taking. You can, if you are playing Peekaboo is a turn-taking game. If you have dolls, if you have cars, whatever you have in your house where there are two people, it's a turn-taking. The next, probably one of the most interesting ways to get kiddos to understand language and learn language is the describing piece and the multisensory piece of materials that you can give your kids to play with. And this is where you clearly have things in your home already. Food is probably one of the, I do have a banana and avocado, but I'll show you this little piece of food. But food that you have at home, you can talk about what it feels like, what color it is, what it looks like, or just give your children items to just touch. Don't even say anything, just watch. And it's so amazing what they might choose to do with a simple, like little pumpkin or with a banana. And then you can really talk about colors, shapes, sizes. If you take sand, and this is, I mean, you can get sand in any toy store. This is like kind of really cool sand that sticks together. And once you have this sand in your hand, once again, this, well, first of all, just like Wendy said, if you have it in a bag, you have to pass that along to your child to see what they'll say to open it. But when you do open it, and you look at this sand molds. Once again, it's a way to have your children describe, talk about, feel, ask for more, and you can find sand anywhere. It's kind of like the same thing with dirt. If you have to have in your backyard, which we all do, if you happen to have dirt, it's the same way. Kids love to dig, get dirty, get their hands messy, but that's another way to enrich kids' communications. I'm just showing you these to know that don't overthink sometimes communication. Communication truly is about your child and you and how you can build a relationship. Once again, these are crunched up leaves. They started out initially in our lesson as a whole leaf, and then we just gave them to the kids and they swished them and pulled them apart and we talked about them. You can make them fall. Once again, these are for free. They're in nature every day. The other, another awesome tool is even if you don't bake, is a cookie sheet. A cookie sheet's a magnet. You can put shaving cream on a cookie sheet. You can move it around. You can make letters. You can talk, or sometimes not even talk, just watch. You can describe what kiddos are doing with a baking sheet and some shaving cream. And just like Mackenzie said, the gift that you can give your children, or if you have grandchildren, is the gift of yourself and the gift of your enthusiasm for who they are. We know no child is the same, and we know that they like to learn, and everybody likes something different. But that's the one thing I can attest to as a veteran, is that what brings children success is having the opportunity to be with communication partners and people that they know acknowledge them and give them attention for all of their communication attempts. And that's for all of us, and you can tell by the way Mackenzie and Wendy are so excited about communication. Kiddos love to be with us. We love to be with them because we know that they are so enriched by individuals, by humans, by our excitement. And that is what, that's like the joy of communication that we all can give to our children. I just have a few more other little things as I was thinking in my box. I just want to show you some very low-tech items that you can make things with, and it doesn't take a lot of time. This is a shoebox that turns into a lot of different things. I have poked holes in them. You can put things on a stick. Kids can put things in. You can have sunshines. You can have snowmen. You can have leaves. They can put them in, they can take them out. Guess what else you can do with this a shoebox? You can take off the top. Find out what's inside. You can change what's inside. Everybody pretty much probably has a shoebox somewhere. Rather than recycle it, you can keep it in your own house. This has Velcro on because sometimes it becomes an ocean. In our speech world, I just put blue there, and then we find fish in the ocean. Then I change it, and sometimes it becomes the beach, and there could be like sand stuck there. But once again, these are tools. These are things that you don't need to buy. You have them all. It's you that make the communication very important. And once again, I'm just kind of the summary of all the things that Wendy and Mackenzie talked about. But I just can't stress enough how important you are to the communication and enrichment of your children. We're here to help, but the people who know, you know your child the best. You love your child, you know how they want to communicate. And so we're here to help you, but also you are here to be the most exciting, amazing, joyous communicator that you can be. So I would like to thank Strongsville for giving us an opportunity to talk about communication. And to summarize, Mackenzie, Wendy, and myself, we're the speech pathologists for the preschool in Strongsville. If you have questions, you can email us, and we are very grateful that we've had the opportunity once again to talk to you, and that we have the opportunity to communicate with all of your kiddos.
So if you would like any of those resources that I shared today, like the sentence strip visuals, or if you have questions about any of these things too, you can contact us. But if you want a copy of those, I have them. I can email them to you or print them out for you. Just shoot me an email, and then we can set that up.
Thank you.